Hey kids, Chef Jack here. As you know, August is Jack Kirby month, and during August, Englentine and I are celebrating the truly monumental contributions to the comic art form made by the legendary Jack the King Kirby. So let's play a game of pretend. In the spirit of Jack Kirby month, we're going to pretend that one day Marvel Comics gave me creative control over one of Kirby's finest creations, the Fantastic Four, and they allowed me free rein to do with the title whatever I wanted. So, given all that, the question arises, just what would I do with it? I'm glad you asked. Pull up a chair because I'm about to tell you. Number 1. We're going to use the Ultimate Fantastic Four's origin. Yeah, I know, it seems a little weird to talk about giving tribute to Jack Kirby and then not use the origin we saw back in Fantastic Four number 1, but the truth is, when the original Fantastic Four story was written, only one person on the entire planet had ever been in space, and he'd only been in space for a grand total of 1 hour and 48 minutes. This was way before we sent people to the moon, and back when the idea of sending a person out of the atmosphere for weeks or months, which has happened since, was completely unthinkable. We just know too much about space travel these days for the idea of sending folks into a short-term orbital trip and then having them come back with superpowers to be workable. But the idea of people gaining superpowers from an accident involving interdimensional travel? Might not be any more plausible in real life than space travel, but this is the world of superheroes, so it's perfect. Number 2. All that said, we are not going to retell the origin story. Why? Everybody already knows the origin story, even the Ultimates version. When we restart the Fantastic Four book, we're going to join the story already in progress. It's been a couple of months since the experiment that gave the Four their powers, and while things haven't settled into a routine yet, they certainly aren't the chaotic mess that would exist right after the experiment occurred. They've actually had a little bit of time to deal with it. Not completely, but at least enough so that we don't have the overwhelming angst that the situation would require. Number 3. Reed Richards is the smartest person in the Marvel Universe. Period. Oh sure, lately Marvel's been pressing Lunella Lafayette and Riri Williams as the two smartest people in the Marvel Universe, not to mention previously portraying Tony Stark and Amadeus Cho as if they had had a shot at the title of, biggest brain in Marvel. But let's lay this shit to rest right now. In our restarted Fantastic Four, there's going to be no question that the first name on the list of people who are smarter than Moon Girl or Ironheart or even Iron Man is Reed, I invent new technologies as easily as you idiots breathe, Richards. We're going to make Reed Richards the scientific authority in the Marvel Universe. And please note what I just said. Above everything else, we're going to stress that he is a scientist. He thinks like a scientist. He acts like a scientist. He's rational like a scientist. People like Tony Stark and Riri Williams are merely engineers. Okay, I just said merely. I shouldn't have said merely. There's nothing wrong with being an engineer. There really isn't. One of my favorite uncles is an aerospace engineer, and he's a damn good one, so I don't mean to actually disrespect any engineers. But, as any fan of the Big Bang Theory can tell you, an engineer is not a scientist. Number 4. Sue Storm is also in the top 5 minds in the Marvel Universe. She's maybe the second or third smartest person in the Marvel Universe, in fact. Think about it. Before the experiment, she was working as a science specialist on one of the most advanced projects ever conceived, alongside the smartest man on the planet. If she wasn't able to keep up with Reed Richards in the brain game, why the hell would she even be there? So, by necessity, she would be almost as smart as Reed. Number 5. In fact, there aren't going to be any non-scientists on this team at all. And yes, I mean Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm are also going to be scientists. Or maybe Johnny will be a scientist, a physicist naturally, while Ben Grimm turns out to be the team's engineer. As I said in the previous entry, the project that gave them their powers was a science experiment. There's no room for people who can't hack the brain work, so all of them are going to qualify. And even though Johnny and Ben aren't going to be on Reed and Sue's level of smarts, compared to the average Joe Blow on the street, they're going to be smart. Our portrayals of them will reflect the fact that they are highly intelligent too. I mean, sure, everybody on the team is going to stumble around while they learn how to use their powers and how they get used to the superhero lifestyle and their new limitations or whatever. But once they get it, they're going to get it better than anybody else in the Marvel Universe because these guys are the smart ones. And that's what smart people do. Also, in addition to their powers, the Fantastic Four are going to be bringing toys to the party. Big robots to help fight bad guys, flying cars, holographic technology, energy weapons, teleporters, medical advances, safety equipment that will revolutionize the world. The fact that the Fantastic Four is making the Marvel Universe a better place, slowly but surely through the power of applied science, is definitely going to be a part of our restart. Number 6. Military funding means military control. So here's the downside. Reed's experiments in dimensional travel would require billions of dollars in funding, and advanced technology that's hard to get and harder to get access to. Therefore, he's going to have to turn to the government for help, and that means military. Most likely the Air Force. And afterward, after the experiment is blown and the Four have their powers, the military is going to see them as an asset and as a way to possibly recoup some of the lost billions of dollars. Now, at first, the Four are going to be kept secret by the government, but they'll eventually get public exposure, and once they're known to the public, they'll be able to slip the noose a little. And eventually, when the government deems it safe, they'll be allowed to live their own lives, but they'll always have Big Brother looking over their shoulder. Number 7. The adjustment phase. One of the running subplots in the first year or two of our version of Fantastic Four will be demonstrating just how the Four are adjusting to their powers. We'll show how Johnny grows to really like his fire abilities, and how Sue is utterly taken aback by her sudden realization that she's capable of a ton more than merely turning invisible. We'll deal with the body horror problems of not just Ben's rocky transformation, but the fact that until he learns to keep it together, Reed turns into a big puddle of goo every time he gets distracted. During the military missions that I mentioned earlier, the teen dynamics will thus flourish. Johnny and Ben's friendly rivalry will stem from their contrasting views on their powers, for example, and by showing their individual personalities and how they're reacting to what's going on with them, they will grow and they will adjust during these sorts of situations. And we as the readers will get a better sense of how the characters become the family that they are supposed to be. Number 8. These characters have histories from before the experiment. Let me explain. In the original Fantastic Four books, one of the few weaknesses was that Lee and Kirby mostly ignored the history of the characters prior to their trip into space that gave them their powers. We are not going to do that. Even later writers didn't do much to fill in their pre-superpowered days. John Byrne tinkered with it occasionally, but, for the most part, there's nothing there. But there is some, and we can build on what is there. We will delve into what it means for Ben Grimm, for example, to be born into poverty and have clawed his way out of it. But that's an easy one. We'll also look into Reed's childhood, in which his rather well-to-do parents were distant and cold, if not uncaring, because they simply could not relate to their son, who was so much smarter than they were. And we'll also really, really dig for some details. For example, in one of the early issues of Fantastic Four, there was a single throwaway mention that both Sue and Johnny were orphaned twins who were adopted into the Storm family. It was, in fact, this single sentence that gave the producers of that god-awful 2015 Fantastic Four movie the justification to have Sue being played by a white actress while the rest of her family was black. So, Sue is adopted. What if she was bullied relentlessly at the various foster homes that she and her brother lived in because not only was she a girl, but she was a smart girl? And what if, because of the bullying, she grew up to be a person who now has to show the world that everybody who ever told her that she was worthless or that she was weird is wrong? And what if this is why she became so invested in Reed's interdimensional travel experiment? She wants to prove that it'll work because she feels that she personally has something to prove. We're going to look into the characters, all the characters, to this particular depth. Number 9, high-octane action. Now, I know that I just went on and on and on about how we're going to be writing about the character dynamic and the interactions and all that, but first and foremost, these guys are going to be scientist explorers, and the story is going to reflect that. To steal a phrase from Star Trek, to boldly go is going to be a byword for the writing team. The action in our version of the Fantastic Four is going to feel alive, it's going to feel dynamic, it's going to feel flowing. And we will make use of the fact that the Fantastic Four have a coordination only possible when you have geniuses doing your planning for you. Each member of the team is an asset who is just as capable in the field fighting a bad guy as he is back in the lab. And we're going to make use of it, because if we don't, we'd be wasting it. Number 10. Reed and Sue are not yet married. We are going to roll back the history a little bit to the point before they get married, back when they were, circling each other and considering the romantic possibilities. Unfortunately, this is going to completely remove Franklin and Valeria Richards from the equation, and you get to decide whether that's a good thing or not. Fortunately, though, it is going to let us play around with the fact that Sue Richards occasionally dallied with other people before she finally settled down with Reed. Specifically, it lets us play around with the question of Namor the Submariner, and more on him later. Number 11. Sue Storm is going to lead the team, not Reed Richards. And now you're asking me why. Well, it's for a very simple reason. Reed is a bit of a blue sky thinker. His head is always in the clouds. Sue is much more practical. She is smart. She has a sense of tactical acumen that none of the rest of the team possess. She's focused. She isn't easily distracted. And unlike Johnny, she isn't impulsive. And unlike Ben, she isn't depressed. Thus, out of all the four, she's the one who would be the natural leader. Number 12. That glorious bastard named Victor Von Doom. To put it bluntly, we're going to make Dr. Doom a supervillain again. No more of this existential crap about his wondering whether his place is as a savior or a destroyer. He's not going to try to be Iron Man. He's seriously not going to try to be Iron Man. The entire infamous Iron Man phase is going to be erased completely. We're just not even going to recognize it ever existed. Dr. Doom is a megalomaniacal asshole. He rules a nation with an iron hand. He's going to be the classic villain. Second, no more magic. Doom has always worked better as a technological genius, so he's going to stick to being a technological genius. His intelligence and his technical savvy will always be on par with Reed Richards. And he makes the perfect master villain because as the head of his own country, he's got resources that nobody else can match. Number 13. Prince Namor of Atlantis. Since the early days of the Fantastic Four comics, the Submariner has been simultaneously one of the Four's greatest enemies and one of their staunchest allies. He is a complex and complicated character, and his use in our version of the Fantastic Four is going to be just as complicated and complex. I mean, seriously, think about it. Is he a hero? Well, he's certainly willing to help when disaster threatens, and he does fight to protect people. Is he a villain? Well, he's also rather ruthless, and he's perfectly willing to wipe out the surface world, or portions of it, if they threaten Atlantis. And then there's that pesky, constant sexual tension between him and Sue Storm, and that's going to cause a lot of trouble among the members of the Fantastic Four. He's not the only guy Sue's going to have her eye on other than Reed, but he's going to be Reed's biggest competition when it comes to romancing her. Number 14. Weird science and cosmic menaces. Now, sure, the Fantastic Four are going to be superheroes, and they are going to be fighting supervillains, but mostly they're going to be concentrating on one particular type of threat. Mad scientists like the Mad Thinker or the Wizard who unleash hordes of genetically engineered dinosaurs or killer androids on an unsuspecting planet. Weird alien invaders like the Skrull or the Badoon or the Shi'ar or the Brood. Even subterranean mole men of Lemuria. And of course, there's going to be the cosmic menaces like Galactus and his heralds, or Annihilus, or the Psycho Man. It's going to be fun, folks. Number 15, a totally badass Baxter Building. Let's face the facts. The Baxter Building, headquarters of the Fantastic Four, is as integral a part of this title as the characters themselves, and as such, it must be depicted as the futuristic team headquarters that it always has been. It's something similar to how Avengers Tower was portrayed in the Avengers movies, but, taken up to 11 and then shot with steroids. This place should blow our minds with how advanced it is on the inside. These are the smartest people in the world. They have the best toys. The place they call home is going to reflect that. We would just be doing it an injustice if we did anything else. And lastly, number 16, the story hook that Lee and Kirby, not to mention John Byrne, just left hanging there. Now, we try not to dwell on, individual story ideas too much in these If We Wrote videos, but the Fantastic Four has a story hook that's just hanging out there that is way too good to pass up. All the way back in the second issue of the Fantastic Four in December of 1961, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby concocted a story in which the Fantastic Four encounter the first group of Skrulls to ever invade the Earth. The story ends with Reed Richards hypnotizing the Skrulls into believing that they are dairy cows, that they have always been dairy cows. A generation later, in Fantastic Four Annual number 17, John Byrne told the tale of how the offspring of the Skrull cows and the regular cows produced a strain of milk that infected the citizens of a rural town and turned them all into monsters. The final panel of Byrne's story left a sequel hook just laying there, and nobody ever used it. Well, we're going to pick that sucker up and run for the hills like we stole it. Some of the body-snatching Skrull-like monsters are still out there, and they are slowly spreading by way of their ability to infect other human beings. They are taking over the country, town by town, and village by village, and city by city. Can Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben stop these monsters before they take over the world? What? Are you kidding? So there you go. If I wrote the Fantastic Four, ladies and gentlemen, what did you think? Did you like it or did you hate it? What would you have done differently? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you like this video and you want to see more, please hit like and hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. Share this video with your friends so we get some more exposure, because we really need it. If you like what we do and you want to help out, we do have a Patreon and VidMe page all set up. The links are below in the info. Feel free to hop on over there and drop $1 or $2 in the till. We really would appreciate that too. But even if you don't, thank you very, very much for watching.